Hi, I'm Annabelle.
And I'm Amy, and welcome to Escape Purgatory, a podcast where we rewatch Supernatural, then talk it through in the hopes that we can finally escape the show.
Join us each week and leave comments on upcoming episodes, and together we can escape Supernatural Purgatory.
Hello.
I said that with a weird inflection, but here you go. We'll get through it. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so this week we are on Season 2, Episode 19, Folsom Prison Blues. I want to say Folsom Street Blues, but if anyone knows what Folsom Street is, then you know why I shouldn't say that. Folsom Prison Blues, which I think is funny because there is an actual Folsom Prison, but this is not where this episode takes place.
No.
It was alright. Just put it that way, it was alright.
I remember this episode being better than it was. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
And I wonder if it's because of, like, the reveal in this episode. Like, there isn't really much of a rewatch value of this because, like, oh, it's not who you thought it was.
I had forgotten.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay, fine. So this episode is written by John Shaban, and who normally does pretty good episodes, and directed by Mike Roll. It has an 8.7 out of 10 on IMDb.
It's a little undeserving of that, in my opinion. I don't know if that's controversial yet, Brave, but I said it.
I think, you know, before we came on the podcast, we were talking about this and how Hollywood Babylon has a lower rating than this episode. And it's just really...
Yeah, at least Hollywood Babylon had, like, entertainment in it. You know what I mean? Like, it was funny. This one was just kind of... It was acted really straightly when I feel like they could have made it more funny. But I know why you're laughing, because some of the lines that are said, especially towards the end of this episode, I was like, don't take this out of context.
No, do. Take everything out of context. All the time.
Yeah, all the time. Every day.
Okay.
So, yeah. I guess we can jump on in. Remember when we used to look at reviews of the episode and talk about them? Don't do that anymore.
Wow.
So, with the recap, it was basically, like, we knew it's going to be a B-plot episode just because of the prison. And it was showing all the events of Night Shifter and just, like, meeting Hendrickson again and all that kind of stuff. So then we cut to now. We're at Green River County Detention Center, and I looked it up. It's actually in Wyoming.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's just sort of like your typical, like, prison yard scene. There's everybody out, just working out, hanging out, doing what they do. They're inside the prison or jail detention center, and they're sort of cutting down a cell door. Like, just one cell. Like, the way they were making it sound is this: if they cut down this door, there's going to be, like, a whole other, like, block of prisons. But it really is just because when I hear cell block, because that's what they were calling it, I was imagining a whole group of them, but it's literally just one single cell.
It looks like they had welded the door shut, and that's why they were cutting through it. I thought it was loads of cells as well. Maybe I was wrong. I don't know. It's a weird shot. I guess it's establishing that they're breaking into somewhere that hasn't been open in a really long time. Complaining about wasting taxpayers' money.
Which is the whole prison system. Anyway, let's not get into that one.
Let's just turn this into Amy and Annabelle's thoughts on the American justice system. Let's go. Okay, no, it's fine.
As they manage to get the door open, we go back to, like, the establishing sort of ghost lore in that, like, it's now cold, there's flickering lights and stuff. So they've just unleashed a ghost into the prison, which I thought was kind of interesting because in the last episode there were 3 ghosts and none of that happened.
Look. It's not consistent, and it's fine. It's fine.
Well, so I was having to think about it, and, like, I wonder if it's situational, because those ghosts weren't necessarily, like, violent, or they weren't there by choice. Whereas this one is obviously a vengeful spirit, so maybe that's why it does all of this stuff.
It's to do with ghost power, like how much ghost power you got on the ghost scale. This one's maybe at like a 7 or a 6. I'd say a 6.
That's my theory. And I think you're right, it's probably ghost power level. It's over 9,000.
Oh no.
So we hear like ghost sounds and all that kind of stuff. And then we cut to a cellmate who we later learn his name's Randall. And the moment I saw him, I was like, oh, it's the Warlock from Buffy. That's all I ever know him from.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I knew I recognised him from somewhere.
And he's just sort of reading a book. More ghost stuff happens. Like there's flickering lights and a bit of a cold spot. And the clock stops.
Yes.
And he's trying to get like the attention through his cell door to the guard, like through the camera. The guard's kind of ignoring it and then says, okay, I'm going to go see what Randall wants. The guard gets there and he's a bit of a dick.
Yeah, well.
Tells him to shut up and go to bed, turn the lights out. And then, like, he calls lights out for the entire area. I'm like, why would you do that? That's terrifying. I mean, you just had a prisoner, like, say there's something out there and, like, hollering at you. And then you're like, nah, it doesn't matter. Just lights out. And as he's walking away back to his guard station, his arm gets trapped in, like, the dividing gate thing. And gets attacked and screaming and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yes. So for me, that was a really long prelude. I guess that's what these are. Like a real kind of heavy setup to this episode of like a ghost in a prison. I was trying to take myself back to the first time I watched this episode and try to remember if I knew where it was going to go. And it was like, I don't think I thought they would go this far.
I mean, it's definitely a departure from like their last episode.
Yeah.
Because the last one, while it was again ghosts, it was kind of making fun of itself. I also thought it was really funny that they had gone back to their sort of desaturated, washed out look, but like there's orange jumpsuit, so there's your color again.
That's true. They're listening to the notes from the network. There is color. It does add a splash of color to another eye. It's quite, but yeah, it's quite a grayscale episode. The title card, after it comes up, it says that this is now 3 months later. So we've had a little bit of a time skip. Normally we go backwards. This time we're going forwards.
And usually when we go forwards, it's usually like a week. I was surprised it was said 3 months. I was like, what do you think what case do you think they were working on when this first ghost appeared?
Do you think they were anywhere near Wyoming? Because they were in California during Hollywood Babylon. I think that's quite a distance to go. So I'm guessing they were just taking things out round about the States. I still wish they'd given us some like intermission episodes or like even just some shorts. They would totally do that these days where they give you like little YouTube shorts of them like driving somewhere or like taking the Impala through a McDonald's drive-through.
Or like, do you think Dean does all the maintenance on the Impala or does he get someone else to come do it sometimes?
No, he absolutely does it all himself. Just like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other intermission things I would have liked to see. Just buying loads of stuff in a gas station. This is really mundane stuff, but I love these characters so much. I said it before. I want to watch them do their laundry.
Like, where did Sam get his like hippie shirt from?
Yeah, let's watch him shop at Goodwill.
Exactly.
Or like, I don't know, going to Bobby's for a barbecue. Like, I'm here for it. Like, I wanted all those little moments. So I'm currently watching the final season of Lucifer, and there's a lot of like plot, fine. But I do feel like that show did get it right in that they show you a lot of small moments in the characters' lives. And it just really fleshes them out. And I would like to see more in Supernatural. We had so many episodes.
I mean, I feel like when they eventually get to the bunker, we see a little bit more of that. Not quite as mundane stuff, but I do feel like we get to see a little bit more like how they would live if they had somewhere to live. But it's kind of it would be kind of cool to see, like, where do they stay when they're not on a case? Like, when they're looking for cases, like, what kind of accommodation do they decide to stay in? Probably much of the same, but, like, do they travel as they go, or do they stay in one spot then travel?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
how often do they sleep in the car? Like, all these kinds of things. Anyway, musing on that. So, yeah, it's been 3 months, and we see Dean and Sam breaking in somewhere. I think it's a museum. Sam is already saying to Dean as they walk through,
I hate this plan, Dean. Yeah, I got that the first 10 times I heard it.
which obviously you don't know the context for yet, so it just looks like this is a bad idea breaking into this place, but Sam hates the plan. They do trip a security alarm, like you see it go from green to red, and they start stealing, like, weapons, like an old axe and, like, a weird fish knife. I think that's a fish knife.
I think so, but they don't even steal it. They just sort of, like, pick them up and look at them.
Yeah.
And they're wearing gloves. The one time that they break into something and they're wearing gloves. Like,
one time they didn't need to. Oh, they had to make it look good, I guess. I mean, maybe they would have made a comment on it if, you know, they had been caught without gloves. So, yeah, they get caught by the police. That's what we're getting at. And arrested. Very much like down on the ground. So they get down on their knees with their hands over their heads. And they do give a show of, like, kind of, like, resisting a little bit. Sam looks very, very unhappy.
Yeah. I think that just sums up Sam's experience for this entire episode. Just very unhappy.
Yeah.
Very unhappy and scared.
I totally agree. Poor Sam. Like, honestly.
Like, I'll get into it, but, like, Sam essentially is a good boy.
Yes,
he's a good boy.
He's a good boy.
So this whole thing is just like, oh my god.
I know. Oh, I do feel for him. So we get the classic little sequence of them getting their mugshots taken. Dean's blue steel face, which is used many times later in the series. Like, you see it come up a lot.
So I do have a little side bit for this. I have a giant poster of this. And at the convention that I went to for Supernatural, like, years ago, I took it because Jared was going to be there, and that's what I wanted him to sign, because I got a signature. And he and his assistant were arguing over the weight that was written on the poster. I think it says like 235 pounds. I don't remember. I was meant to take it out to have a look, but he was like, I don't think I was I? And, like, before we started recording, me and Amy were both talking about, like, when we were there, and I do not remember. We have our picture taken with him, Jared. Yeah. I don't remember it at all. Like, I don't remember. So yeah, that's my meeting Jared Padalecki story of him arguing over his weight at that time, which I don't, like I said, I don't remember exactly what it was, but anyway.
Yeah, that's great. That must have been, I really want to say, like, 2015. I want to say 2015. So. Yeah. Long time ago.
It was a very long time ago. And also, that's where I met Misha for the first. I remember meeting Misha twice, because I almost fell on top of him. Kind of. I fell into him. Which is, I'm getting embarrassed thinking about it right now. Yeah. Like, I'm, you know that, like, nervous sweat? I've got that right now. Anyway, it was fun.
Oh. Our first convention story on the podcast. There'll be more. We have more.
Oh, yeah.
Just reel them in. Dean's in an interrogation room that looks eerily similar to the interrogation room in The Usual Suspects. I think it's the same one. But
it probably is.
And Hendrickson is there. He has a partner with him too, who I had no recollection of, called Reed.
Yeah, no, I don't remember.
He contributes almost zero to this episode, so...
I wrote they're basically bad cop and dumb cop. Because he literally just repeats what Hendrickson says.
Yes, exactly. He's just backup, I guess. Yeah. I would say, so Dean is very sassy Dean. He's ordering cheeseburgers like, took you long enough, all this kind of stuff. And
with extra onions. I'm like, I'm not ready for more onions in this episode. I'm not over last week's episode.
Oh my god, the onions.
You think you're funny.
I think I'm adorable.
It is a pleasure to finally meet you in person, Dean.
I've used that gif so many times in so many situations. It's perfect for everything because I am adorable, actually. Once Dean realizes who he is, because it takes him a moment to clock Hendrickson, because they never met in Night Shifter. He only ever talked to him on the phone. So it takes him a moment. And once he realizes who Hendrickson is, he does look a little bit more worried than he did before, I think.
There's a very subtle change of his, like, from like a cocky smile to like almost like a forced, like, cocky smile. But so the interaction between the both of them just shows like how opposite but the same these two characters are.
Yes.
They have this very, very much the same attitude of like wanting to help people and get the bad guys. Mm-hmm. But they don't realize, well, Hendrickson doesn't realize he's actually on the same side.
Well, yeah, this is it. You're right, actually, they are very similar in their kind of obsessive drive. Dean, not so much in season 2, but it comes back later on, that kind of like obsessive drive to help people. But I feel like it's maybe not so much about helping people for Hendrickson at this point. He just really does seem to have some kind of like personal vendetta out for Dean particularly. Maybe it's because he evaded him last time. But, you know, in some ways he's a hunter too, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
So Hendrickson gets Reed to list off the charges that Dean is facing.
Read him the charges.
We got mail fraud, credit card fraud, grave desecration.
Skip to the good ones.
Armed robbery, kidnapping, and, 3 counts of first-degree murder.
And after Milwaukee, your brother is now a suspect in a murder case himself. I say for you two, screwed to hell is a major understatement.
So, like, it's fine.
Yep, and nothing to worry about. You won't be sent to the electric chair or anything.
Mm-hmm. And he does say now that Sam is also a suspect, like aiding and abetting. Although they don't seem to think that Sam actually did any of this himself, just so he's kind of along for the ride, which is just, it's kind of hilarious to me because they are as bad as each other. Like,
well, I guess, like, it does seem that Dean is the corrupting force because he comes back and suddenly, like, he's taking part in all of this stuff.
Yeah. And they must have some kind of idea about John because they have mentioned him before. So he must also have some suspicions around him. He does say to Dean here, like, they did a good job of disappearing after Night Shifter and that his dad taught him well. It's also almost like a dig. Like, you know, Hendrickson knows that that's Dean's kind of weak spot and kind of poking him in it.
You just got to think back to Night Shifter. Hendrickson's not dumb. He's incredibly smart. Mm-hmm. So that first time that he poked in Night Shifter and got that reaction is probably what led him to like look more into John Winchester.
Definitely. Yeah, he's got a weird little double act going on with Reed. Like, Dean's quite amused by it. I kind of like his face in that. It's very cute. Hendrickson is also quite suspicious that they got caught so easily because he was like, you know, this isn't like you. You tripped an alarm. Like, you managed to evade me for months and suddenly, like, you were wearing gloves almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is out of character. But before you can really kind of get into, like, his monologuing, their lawyer shows up, Mara Daniels, and basically shuts down the interrogation.
There's a couple of things that we find out here that they're wanted in 5 states. Like, they're all asking for them to be extradited to a different state. And that they're being sent to the county prison. But it's only going to be a very short amount of time before they get sent somewhere else. I guess for the murders.
And it's kind of a weird... The conversation is kind of bizarre because they're like, oh, is there a way to stall us being extradited? They don't want to move. They are concerned about getting into this prison. So then they're on the prison bus being transported to the detention center. Sam's never going to be a lawyer now. Like, he's got an arrest record. At least I think that's how it works. I'm pretty sure you can't be a lawyer, a criminal lawyer anyway, if you've got a criminal background. But, I mean, maybe not. Maybe not.
Who knows? Did you notice that when Dean got arrested, he wasn't wearing any of his stuff that might get taken off him? So, like, his, the Samulet is gone, and so all his rings.
Huh.
Because I guess he never thought that he was going to get those back, so.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. That's really interesting, because I didn't clock it. I guess because I was wondering why Dean looks so much like regular Dean, as in, like, later seasons Dean.
Yeah,
and it's because he doesn't have any of it.
It's totally true. There's some bits in this where he's talking in the camera angle, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this could be 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
Definitely. Dean almost looks excited, right?
Yeah.
And Sam is very scared.
I wrote, I don't think this is Dean's first time in prison, first of all.
Yeah, no, I didn't say.
I feel like that is confirmed later on. Somebody knows. And I'm pretty sure it is. So this isn't such an unknown situation for him as it is for Sam. And also, Dean seems to have a lot of faith in what they're doing here. Whereas Sam seems like, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah. Like, of all the plans, this is the worst.
Yeah.
So they're being shown to their cells. They're now in their jumpsuit. Dean's cellmate has, like, the longest hair.
Yeah.
It's actually ridiculous. And then Sam's, like, he sort of nods to him. Then the guy stands up, and he is huge. Like, that guy must be 7 feet tall. He has to be. He was massive. I was like, oh God.
It just, as they close, because they're opposite each other, Sam and Dean, like, as they close the door, like, Sam's look at Dean like, I can't believe you got me into this. Like, I hate you. Honestly, it's just so funny.
So, you know, it's really funny that you said that you think Dean's been arrested before, because this is verbatim what I just wrote. Sam looks visibly scared, and because essentially he's a very good person, so the idea of prison is terrifying, whereas Dean, he has probably been arrested from drunken shenanigans. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Why Dean got arrested? I imagine that it was mostly for petty theft. I don't know, generally just... I mean, most of the times I think that Dean was ever in trouble with the police or arrested is A, because he was doing something for John that was super shady for a hunt, or B, stealing stuff for Sam because John hadn't got it for him.
Yep, that's exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
Yep. More than likely.
Yeah. I think Dean in this episode is... Okay, he does seem very sort of like, yeah, you're right, kind of almost excited to do this hunt, because it's kind of different, I guess. And he kind of has faith in it working out. I also do feel that a lot of this is putting on a little bit of a front for Sam, because Sam is so nervous about the situation that, like, Dean's like, it's okay, everything's really funny and chill, so everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah, definitely. I think I agree with you on that one, because Dean is very confident about, like, this whole thing.
Exactly. So it shows them in line, waiting, I think, for lunch or something, and they're talking about their cellmates, comparing cellmates, and Sam says this absolutely great line.
This is without a doubt the dumbest and craziest thing we've ever done, and that's in a long storied career of dumb and crazy. Calm down.
I love it.
Oh, if only you know. If only you know.
You don't know yet. Yeah, you don't know, Sam, the crazy, dumb stuff that you will do. Oh no.
Actually, I think this probably is the craziest dumb thing they've ever done, because everything after this is like, it's on a supernatural level. This is a human level.
That's true, actually. Like, I'm trying to think. There's another situation like this that they get themselves into, actually twice, I think, more. So it's on par. But yeah, you're right. This was kind of the stupidest thing they've ever gotten themselves into. I'm going to regret saying that. I'm sure there's something else.
Please let us know what you think their dumbest thing that they've ever done is.
Yeah, I really actually want to read those. Please.
Because I feel like we've said this before, but I don't know what it was about. But this definitely feels like it. This is it.
Does this belong on the top? We definitely started a top 10 list, like in our brains, and I don't think this made it on that list at that time. So yeah, so Dean's saying basically like, calm down, Sam. This is all part of the plan. And I guess if you're watching the episode for the first time, this is kind of the reveal, I guess, that they're in there for a reason other than just being arrested because they got caught. I think it kind of does sort of hint at that before this, but it's kind of confirming it. And Dean says they're here to hunt a ghost. Yeah, we're going to hunt a ghost and then get teardrop tattoos and leave. Like, okay, Dean. He says that his escape plan is 100% sure thing. All of this seems to be Dean's idea, and Sam's just gone along with it because he trusts him. This takes a lot of trust that this is going to work out, because they're only at a county jail now. If they had got moved on quite quickly, like they could have been separated super easily. This could have escalated super fast.
Yes, definitely. And so I was thinking about this, and I was like, this seems like a really weird turn to take for the series, to be like, let's throw them in jail. But like, I guess this was a vehicle for the B plot. This is what this episode was. Mm-hmm. And I'm not mad at it, because I kind of, while this episode's okay, it's still kind of, there's some fun parts to it. Mm-hmm. Which I feel like we've actually just sort of gone past all the fun parts. But anyway. This whole plan is really dumb. It really is. Because they already know that they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And that they've been laying low.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did this for, like, at the moment, no reason. We find out what the reason is. But, like, at the moment, we don't know the reason why they would even take this case.
Well, they do say it while they're stood in line here. That they're doing this for a guy called Deacon, who was their dad's friend. They said he's in the Corps with John. But even Sam says, like, you barely know him. So Sam doesn't know this guy at all. Dean barely knows him. And, like, yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I really enjoyed this conversation that I have in line here, actually, because, like, yes, this was, first of all, we find out, yes, this was Dean's idea. They're doing it as a favor to one of their dad's friends, who I presume is a hunter because ghosts. And also, Sam is kind of not on board, but has gone along with it, because he even kind of hints here that, like, why are we helping these people? They're inmates. And Dean is very defensive of them, and is like, you know, just because they're in prison doesn't mean they deserve to die. Again, making me think that Dean is vibing with the people in here, like he fully understands them. You know, if he's been to prison before, he's obviously talked to people, realised they're just people. And it's weird that he has more empathy than Sam. You think that, you know, Sam was training to be a lawyer. Like, what's this view, Sam?
Yeah. And I do wonder if this is, because so far we've seen how Dean treats a ghost who should be dead, like, and that he doesn't want to help, a trickster who he likes but still has to kill.
Yeah.
And a woman who was unfortunately turned into a monster and there was nothing they could do about it. Mm-hmm. So we've seen, like, a lot of Dean's perspective on how he sees, like, monsters.
Yeah.
And not people.
Yeah.
Necessarily. Whereas this one, we're seeing how Dean views people and how Sam sees certain types of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, actually. Because you would think with the lifestyle that they have, like going from place to place, like, not, Dean necessarily hasn't always seen the best in people, you know? Mm-hmm. But then there must be some times, especially in the, like, hunters, like you think about Bobby, where they have really been helped out by people too. So, yeah, right. It's interesting to see his kind of, this is where Dean is an optimist. I think he sees the best in people often. Mm-hmm. Which is maybe why the Benders was such a weird episode for him, because it was like so turned that on its head, and definitely kind of understanding that here. It's an interesting one. I quite enjoy it, because it's usually is the other way around, right? Normally Sam is having to explain to Dean, no, we need to empathise with this, like, monster of the week or whatever. So it's nice to see it the other way around for a change. I thought the line at the end of this scene was quite interesting, where Dean was saying that they are loyal and pay their debts. And I'm like, no, you don't.
Not even close.
Paying your debts. Come on. I mean, maybe eventually. Not willingly.
No. So when he was saying that, like, they're doing this for, like, Dad's friend, John's friend, and I was like, thought you were over this, Dean. You know, you don't have to do this for John anymore.
This is totally for John. This whole episode, he's almost like another ghost. Like, he's mentioned a few times. I don't know. John lingers in this episode, and I don't like it.
He does. No, he's been gone for 17 episodes. Let's keep him gone. So, anyway, moving on. So I guess they are now in the dining hall, like they've just eaten or they're eating, and Dean is adapting rather well. Like he says he enjoys the chicken that's has been served, and they're sort of discussing the case and who they think it might be. They think it's a cellmate called Moody. I think his name, something Moody. Sam's still very nervous.
You sure it's him?
Pretty sure.
Dean, considering our circumstances, I'm gonna need a little bit better than pretty sure.
Really pretty sure.
Love that.
Sam is not impressed. Not even a little bit. Moody had died in the cell that they had just reopened, and it was sealed. It was sealed after his death, and then it was when it reopened, that's when all the hauntings started happened. And he died of a heart attack. So, and all of the victims, there's been 5 of them, I believe.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Have all died of heart attacks.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's a pretty strong correlation that this is their ghost. Dean seems pretty certain that it is. Again, being super supportive of Sam in his time of need of, like, poor guy. Like, did he eat anything in the whole time they're there? Because he really didn't enjoy that food.
He's for someone who has to be on the road all the time, he is quite a picky eater.
Yeah.
Right?
He had those 4 years of being able to cook what he wanted, and then he has to go back to, like, junk food and burgers and pie and ice cream and, like, constantly. I don't know how Dean does constantly feel like absolute crap. Like, honestly, because okay.
His diet is not good.
It's not good. So Dean suddenly says, like, I'm done, and, like, puts down his stuff and walks off. It was such a weird move. And then Sam follows him and bumps into this guy as he's walking past, and it's very typical, like, prison drama. Sam apologizes, but the guy kind of sort of fronts up to him, and Dean comes up and is like, well, he said he was sorry. So, of course, they start fighting. Oh, there's a whole lot of back and forth of you talking to me, which is...
Talking to me? Are you talking to me?
Oh, great, another guy who's seen Taxi Driver one too many times. Yeah, I'm talking to you.
I do every time I watched it. I paused it just after he made those, like, first taxi references, and I was like, the old Taxi Driver, and I was like, Dean has to make a comment about it, right? He won't let that slide. And then I continued the episode, and of course he's like, oh, someone who's seen Taxi Driver one too many times.
Of course, he has to comment. So, you know, Dean kind of encourages him to let it go, but they do start to fight. It's quite a good fight. I appreciate the choreography of this one. Dean's obviously trying not to hurt this guy. Like, he's making a big point of it, because he doesn't really punch him. He kind of slams him against the wall and then sort of, you know, gets him on the ground. He gives him time between it as well to be like, we can just stop fighting.
He's sort of very deflective fighting, not, like, aggressive fighting.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of more defensive than offensive. But of course, the guards step in as he kind of pushes this guy to the ground, and they both get a stint in solitary. As they walk off to solitary, we see Sam and the guy's friend who Dean was fighting with is, like, this huge guy, and he just kind of looks at Sam and, like, gives him the eye, like, I'm gonna get you later. And Sam just looks resigned. Like, he doesn't even seem to care. He's just like, fine.
Yeah.
You do know
he does the like throat slitting gesture as well with his thumb. I was just like, how cliche prison can you get? I think that's what it was with this episode. It was very much like John Shaban and Kripke, they watched like a whole bunch of prison movies and was like, okay, let's put everything in this one episode. Yeah. Without sort of making it a supernatural episode. Like, I feel like they could have done more with it. I'm not sure what they could have done, but like, it felt very on the nose as a prison episode.
I think you're right, actually. Did you know or notice that the big guy who's threatening Sam is Cliff Costerman, who for a long time was Jared and Jensen's bodyguard and driver?
Yes. So he was the guy. He was the guy that Jared was arguing with at the convention.
Hey!
He was there.
Full circle storytelling. We can do it.
There you go, all you circular story fans. Yes! I thought I recognized. I was like, where have I seen this guy before? I've met him in real life. That's why.
Of course, it makes total sense. Yeah. So he plays a pretty big part in this episode, actually. Oh, this episode. Yep. The gift that keeps on giving, apparently.
Apparently. Like, who knew that this episode was going to turn out to be so good? For our stories.
Yeah, only for our stories. So, okay. So Dean's in solitary. I just want to say, this whole bit in solitary was really nicely shot. And I don't know if the camera just loves Jensen sometimes, but this was really, really nicely shot. It's just the lighting, everything just looked great.
He had a good freckle game going on. I wonder if he went out in the sun.
Yeah, the freckle game was on point. You are correct, actually. Just less makeup that day. Like, stop covering freckles with makeup, people. Mm-hmm. She says. She does it herself. So Dean's in solitary and he says that he's wished he has a baseball. And he's trying to make conversation with the guy he was fighting with. But it's not really going very well. The guy's still quite hostile towards him.
Yeah. He wants a baseball bat to beat his head in. I was like, when he said that, I was like, nobody speaks like that. Nobody speaks like that. Not really.
So the lights flicker and there's a cold spot and Dean's like, oh crap. And suddenly, I wrote here, like, nice shots of Dean. Because they do like a really close-up shot of him looking through like the peephole of the door. Really appreciate that because he's looking for the ghost. He calls out to the other inmate and he's like, just stay really still. Like, he's trying to save him despite not really being anything that he can do. But unfortunately, he hears the ghost attack this guy and you kind of see it. He gets all like black sort of like veins up his... Mm-hmm. It's very reminiscent of like Leviathan later on. I thought really reminded me of that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was kind of interesting what they did with the ghost. They didn't show it. They only showed like the eyes. I was like, I'm watching this at midnight and he's got these creepy freaking eyes like looking at. I'm like, why do I do this to myself?
This actually, because they held off so long on showing the ghost, this was actually quite a scary episode. Like, when that guard was walking down the corridor, they were doing a lot of like, this is going to be a jump scare, this is going to be a jump scare, because they were often shooting him from behind. And normally when they shoot someone from behind, then they turn around, they're like, a ghost! But they didn't do it, and it was just like, it kept you waiting for like, when's the jump scare?
I feel like John Shaban is able to write tension quite well. The action sequences, obviously it helps with the director as well. Yeah. And like one at the very end of the episode too, all of the like heavy action based stuff is really tension filled, and like I think that was what was getting to me.
Yeah, it was actually very tension filled episode actually, and it felt it all the way through. And I guess it almost plays into the storyline as well with them potentially being stuck in prison. Like, are they going to get out by the end of this? And it runs through the whole episode. That's the theme. It has that. It definitely has that like we're on the clock feel on top of like we have to save people feel. Yeah, which is very different to what they like. Yeah, they're usually in a rush to save a case because they want to save people, but they also have to save themselves, which they don't always have to do. Not often, no, actually. So, as we kind of see this guy get attacked by this ghost, it cuts back to Hendrickson, and he's talking to Daniels, the lawyer, for Sam and Dean. And she's kind of bringing this up, that there are some very weird things going on with this case, because she's talked to a few people and says, like, the cop in Baltimore swears that they saved her life and also helped to catch a killer. Like, the witnesses at the robbery say the same thing, you know, that they saved, you know, this girl, that they saved her life. And Hendrickson is very, very dismissive of this. Rude, actually.
Yes.
And
this conversation made me uncomfortable. It had a lot of sexist overtones in it.
They just don't seem cut and dry guilty to me. I think there's more to this.
Like what?
I don't know. Can't put my finger on it. It's just strange.
Strange. Yeah. Okay. Grown-ups are trying to get some work done here, so if you don't mind.
It was kind of like she was very much being dismissed in a way that she shouldn't have been. Like, lawyers and like defense lawyers and police can disagree, but I don't think they ever get this kind of hostile about it. And I guess it's showing like Hendrickson's obsession with them.
yeah.
And his like inability to sort of get past anything that, you know, get past the fact that these guys are killers.
Yeah. This is weird to me because I think we've been presented Hendrickson as quite an obsessive character who's obviously going after them. So why is he actually not more interested in all the weird inconsistencies with their case? Because you would think he would want to know, like, why are these guys desecrating graves at the same time as doing armed robbery? Like, it doesn't actually make a lot of sense. And the witness accounts, he says they're not reliable, but like, there must be more of them even than this. Or like possible sightings of Sam and Dean, like cases that they've done and people that they've talked to who have seen them are not always going to tell the same story of like, they broke into my house and like salt and burned my wife. They're going to be like,
Right.
yeah, this guy saved us.
You know, this whole thing started with Skins, right? Essentially. They must have spoken to Sam's friend.
Yeah.
The girl in that episode, who was attacked by a shapeshifter. That should have tipped you off right then and there, like something was up.
But it's tough though, isn't it? Because like, what would you tell the police? Well, I was attacked by something. What did it look like? Well, it looked like Dean. Yeah, I guess it's difficult to corroborate these stories when the supernatural stuff is involved. But yeah, I was just surprised that he was so dismissive of her. It makes sense of this bit of the story, but also like, maybe he is kind of secretly looking into this and doesn't want to be seen as like a kook, just in my own headcanon. Like a Mulder. Like, you don't want to be put in the basement with the X-Files. Better shut up about ghosts.
Well, there's also like a little bit of a hint as to his like thought process, because he says wherever they go, somebody dies.
Which is true.
100% true. But they usually, like, they go after somebody has died too.
Yeah. But it depends how close the events are. Like, it's really difficult to line up. Yeah. I get why Hendrickson is obsessed with them. Like, it does seem like a real weird case of, like, grow up in a paramilitary household and then they've gone kind of, like, off the rails and started murdering people. But there's too much for him to ignore. So, after that conversation, we've cut back to Sam and he's mopping a bathroom with Randall and he's using it as an opportunity to get to know him and to ask some questions. So, he kind of asks him about, like, how long he's been there, all these kinds of things that will come up. And then, was he there the night the guard died? Because he'd heard that he was. Randall kind of confirms that and says, like, you know, he didn't.
Well, he doesn't really say too much about what happens. He's kind of reluctant to sort of give him any sort of concrete details.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that he heard him, like, screaming and stuff. You know, it was something that Randall said, like, he called him like a young boy or young man or something like that.
Yeah.
And it sort of clicked with me that, like, yeah, Sam at this point He's maybe 23, 24.
I know. It's so hard not to just see him as like a 40-year-old. Like,
Right. Like, see him at the end of the series
Mhm.
and he's like in his late 30s. And I'm like, of course he's terrified. He's a baby in prison.
Yeah.
Like,
he asks Sam here, like, what he did to land himself in prison.
Because I got an idiot for a brother. That'll do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Sam is blaming Dean for his current predicament, even if he's doing it like colloquially and not actually saying what's going on. Which fine. He manages to get some more information out of Randall. He talks about the old cell block being reopened. Also, Randall was there the night that this guy Moody died, and this wasn't of a heart attack. He says that the guards actually killed him. So it kind of makes sense for a vengeful spirit as well. And Sam kind of has an idea and asks him how much blood there was in the cell, which, like, super weird question, Sam, but fine.
well, so it's not that weird because Randall does say that he was the person who mopped it up. Yeah. It's not too weird.
I guess it's like, well, how much work did you have to do, Randall, to clean up this bloody cell? Okay, fine, Sam. So, like, he was always going to go look. He didn't need to ask.
He can be prepared for what he needs to do because he probably won't have another chance to get to this area. So
That's
you
true.
have more information going in.
Mm-hmm.
So Sam goes back out to the prison yard and Dean is hustling another prisoner for, like, in some sort of card game. I don't know what kind of card game. I'm going to guess poker, some form of poker.
Mm-hmm.
And he wins because this is Dean. He's been doing this since he was like 10. Let's be real.
Yeah. They've got two, they had 2 cards each. Is that Texas Hold'em? I don't know enough about poker.
Sam has a little bit of little control issues because he has a plan now and he's clearly a lot more confident. But when Dean had a plan, he was like questioning it.
Yeah. I can relate.
I mean, yeah, it's not difficult to understand why because they are in such a dangerous predicament and like they had an entrance plan and an exit plan, but like kind of nothing else.
I mean, yeah, also you have to think about situations where you've been in dumb situations with friends and it's someone else's idea and you're like, I definitely shouldn't be doing this, but I'm doing it anyway. But then when the dumb idea is your idea, it's the best idea ever.
That's, you know what, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Okay, yeah. So Sam is basically saying that there's a load of blood in this cell, so now we can salt and burn. We have something to salt and burn. We can do it. There's remains. So they're going to go do that somehow. He's wondering how they're going to salt and burn. They should have definitely thought of this before they went into the prison. How are you going to salt and burn whatever you find there? Because I feel they could have prepared, but then I don't want to think about how they would have prepared for that. So let's...
Well, so... But the thing is, this entire case could have been solved outside of the prison.
I was gonna say that later on, but like, yeah,
Me
you're
too.
totally right. Like this, there was actually no need for them to be here at all. Like at all.
No,
this was
at
dumb. This was so.
I wonder if this is more like Dean wanted something to do.
I mean, he was asked to do it. I guess this was someone else's idea that he took on as his own idea, then he then told to Sam. There's a very long chain of dumb going on here.
I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. And since Dean has just managed to get like this giant pile of cigarettes, which is like currency, he's able to get what he needs. And I think it's kind of funny that they're back in the food hall and they have sort of a reverse conversation that they just had.
You sure about this?
Are you sure?
Yeah, well, considering our circumstances, I'd like a little better than pretty sure.
Okay, really pretty sure.
And he decides to go after Tiny. They call him Tiny.
Oh, yeah. Dean's really mean to this guy. Like, he sits down opposite him and full on just, like, lets him have it. Trying to, get him to fight him. Of course, he manages to rile up Tiny. And he punches Dean quite hard in the face. And then manages to grab him in like a chokehold from behind, essentially. The guards take a little bit to come in and kind of break them up. Dean gets thrown on the floor. A guard helps him up, and then another guard comes over who's like an older guy, and kind of there's a lot of face grabbing in this episode. There
is. There's a lot of, how do I say this? Homoeroticism?
There's a little undercurrent there. Like in the first fight, this same guard kind of puts his baton under Dean's chin and like lifts his face up with that, which is a little suggestive. And then in this scene, the same guard kind of grabs him by his cheeks and like squishes his face in before punching him in the stomach and sending him on his way.
So all of this was a distraction so Sam could get into the kitchen and do his Spidey thing. He's back to Spidey Sam.
Yes.
I'm not letting this go.
No.
I'm not letting this go. He is Spider Sam forever. Because he manages to get into a duct and get to the cell, which, how? Air ducts are not easy to navigate. Like, how does he know exactly where to go? Did they look at the prison layout beforehand?
Possibly, but also we very much established that Sam has an excellent sense of direction.
This is true. This is true. He knows exactly where his Spidey senses.
It's his Spidey senses, yeah. Spiders always know where to go to be the most creepy and horrible.
Exactly.
I don't like that.
So he makes it to the cell, and there's still blood on the mattress, which I think is hilarious. That is like, there was so much blood in this cell that like it took a lot of time to mop up, but then there's just only one puddle on the mattress that's on the floor. Like, surely that would have sort of... And why was the mattress that was full of blood just left there? Like, wouldn't they have taken that out?
Yeah, people are disgusting. I don't know. I guess they welded it shut for evidence because the guards killed that guy, so they were covering it up. I don't know. I make excuses for the show here, but, like, it is dumb. I would say Sam's face, as he uncovers that blood, he does an expression on his face, and it's like, he seems sad. He does a little like, oh. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he probably is sad because he also, during the conversation with Randall, he's like, well, did anyone report the beating? And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And like, so Sam's very innocent in that he's like, oh, they didn't even try to help this person. They just beat him and left him for dead.
This is totally true, actually. I guess it's kind of confirming Randall's story. And obviously the official story of him having a heart attack is not true, so it was a cover-up. That's a good face to make, Sam. I appreciate the nuance that was there in the expression.
I mean, especially for someone who wants to become a lawyer. Like, again, he never says what kind of lawyer he wanted to be. It's kind of a very big umbrella. In my headcanon, he wanted to be a defense lawyer.
Yeah.
For hunters, because that would make sense. So yeah, he would feel sympathy. I mean, obviously earlier in the episode, he didn't really feel sympathy for anybody that was in this prison.
Yeah. This is where our headcanons differ, because I always thought that Sam would want to go into really like boring like finance law or something. I don't know why. Yeah, some kind of corporate law. Yeah. I don't know why. I always think that it's just... I just imagine him with a briefcase. And I know everyone can carry a briefcase if they want, but it's just corporate lawyers makes me think of briefcases.
I mean, yeah. I honestly don't. So the reason why that's my headcanon is because he gets back into the life so quickly. So I don't think he ever really wanted to leave it.
See, and mine's the opposite. Is I think he wanted something like corporate law to get as far away from hunting as physically possible. So we go back to the infirmary, and Dean and Tiny are in like separate cells. And Dean is apologising for the things that he said, which I thought was a really, really sweet moment. Like, I really liked this. Where he's like, I was just trying to get you to fight me for reasons. Like, I'm really sorry for the things that I said.
Hey, Tiny.
Yeah?
Hey, sorry about the things I was saying earlier. I can't really tell you why, but I had to get you angry. So, anyway, sorry.
It's okay. Truth is, I have low self-esteem issues. My old man treated me and my brother like crap, right up till the day he died.
How'd he die?
My brother shot him.
Okay.
Again, showing that he really sees the people in this jail as like people rather than inmates. There's a really deep level of empathy that Dean seems to feel for the people here. I don't know. It made me feel a lot of feelings. So obviously, like, Tiny replies, like, it's okay. The truth is I do have a self-esteem issues. My old man treated me and my brother like crap. And I just put, right, okay.
I mean, this is the other, like, subtle John reference, I feel.
Yes, I felt this.
And he explains that the only way that they got away from him is when his brother shot him. And I was like, oh, yeah. When Yellow Eyes had possessed John, and John was begging Sam to shoot him, and he didn't.
No, he did shoot him.
Well, he did, but not, like, kill him.
Yeah!
So I was just like, oh.
I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a lot of things. This conversation, I feel like there should have been more Dean based in this, because he says that he treated them like crap right up to the day he died, John. And like, Dean's reaction to Tiny saying that like his brother shot his dad was just like, okay then. Like, it was so far out of the realm of possibility, like, that Dean had ever considered that someone could do that. And it's like, your life experience, Dean. Like, anyway. Fortunately, before they can continue their daddy issues talk.
And parallels.
Is Dean Tiny in this? A ghost appears, and it's a woman. It's not. We were expecting a man. Moody was supposed to be a man, but this ghost is a lady. So Dean grabs the salt from his dinner tray, which is convenient, and gets thrown around a little bit by this ghost before it grabs his heart. And I have big feelings about this, but he manages to salt the ghost, and it disappears.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you, Annabelle.
Yes, Amy.
Why? I'll speed up a little bit with your question. Why, when Dean dies or is gonna die or is getting, in trouble, why waste the heart?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. That's a very good question.
It just...
I wonder if it's like... Because it's funny you just say that, because a Bon Jovi song just came to mind.
I know what Bon Jovi song.
And that was how I was going to try and lighten the mood. Just be like, oh, it's because he's into heavy metal and it's like heart related.
Yeah.
But it's really not that. It's probably just like... Let's be real. Dean is actually a very emotional character.
Yeah.
And where are your emotions? They're in your heart, supposedly. Like, so maybe it's that.
Are they trying to take... I don't know. It's just... It happens too often for it to be a coincidence. And I know kind of like getting stabbed in the heart or getting shot through the heart is a trope and a cliche. But specifically to this character, it happens way too much. And maybe you're right. Maybe they're trying to kill his emotions because maybe Dean was never supposed to be emotional. He's our manly man, like American cowboy trope. Yeehaw. Like... I'm so sorry.
Tell us how you really feel.
So maybe this was it. Maybe it's like a kind of symbolic killing the heart of the show. I think I've said those words before. But that's what it feels like. And I know this is just it fits into the story, and this all makes sense of why the ghost is attacking his heart in this story. But next time it happens, I'm going to say it again, and then you're going to hear this rant about 10 to 15 times, because I swear it happens too much in this show.
What she was doing to his heart, can you imagine him trying to do that to the brain and like him not dying straight away?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you're right. Also, it could just be, oh God, Amy, why are you doing this to yourself? Okay, I'm probably going to cut half of this down because it's way too long. I'll leave this as my final thought on this. So Dean said in a previous episode that, because he was talking about John and talking about how going down fighting was going to be his legacy, right? Mm-hmm. John ended up dying of a heart attack. And I wonder if this is just another mirror that they're trying to place for him to be like John, that this is the way that Dean goes out, right? By having his heart damaged in some way. So what I'm saying is...
they never let go that Dean is John.
They never let it go. They never let it go.
That's my one of the episode, and it's headed right at you. You can't do this to me. I'm the one who does it to you. Yeah. That's
it, isn't it? That's it. That's the one. That's the reason. Oh my God.
That's horrible. I hate it. But it's probably true.
Yeah. Well, okay. I didn't expect this to turn into... I haven't had a finale rant in like a really, really long time. And I didn't expect it would be this episode, but I guess fine.
Well, I mean, like you said, there's the ghost of John in like this entire episode, so it kind of makes sense that it would come up.
That's true. Oh, I'm so angry. I'm so angry at this show. I'm so angry at it. I have many questions from many people. If anybody knows anybody from the show that I can have a rant at about this, not an angry rant, it would just be like this. Like, yeah. I'm not gonna put that.
I love how you your tone went really angry and then drops. Like you're imagining it and you're like, no, I wouldn't do this at all.
I'm not an angry person. I'm really not. Yeah. Okay, all right, okay, rant over. Let's get back to the episode. Where were we? So, yes.
Yes, he assaulted her and she's disappeared. But then she attacks Tiny and he's not so fortunate. And, I wonder why they did it this way. Maybe they were running out of money for, special effects. Because, he's just sort of a shadow and, held up against the side. And then, that's it.
Yeah, you're totally right.
So it's the next day, and Dean tells Sam that it didn't work. It's actually a woman. Mm-hmm. And Sam's like, well, there's not really much we can do because I've already contacted Deacon, and we're getting out today in 5 hours.
Yeah.
So they have to do some research real quick. And in order to do research, they go to the old-timer Randall, who is basically bribed with cigarettes to, tell them who the nurse was, and her name's Nurse Glockner.
Yeah.
And she shouldn't have been a healthcare professional, let's just put it that way.
Do they call them angels of death? I think that's right. That's a serial killer term, right? But,
well, yeah, and they're usually associated with, people who are dying or in hospital rather than, in prison. But I'm sure it could be anywhere.
So, yeah, they're basically saying that she was a vigilante. She was killing people that she thought were bad people by, I guess, giving them bad meds and causing heart attacks, which tracks with the ghost. And Dean kind of says, oh, yeah, so of course it was it was going to target me. And I was thinking, I guess for fighting, I couldn't think what else Dean had done wrong.
Well, so...
being mean to Tiny...
it is kind of interesting that, so in that first fight, he's not injured, right? He doesn't have any kind of markings, and the ghost goes directly to Lucas, which is the guy that got killed in the first one, in the first section. And then in this next one, he is actually injured, and he has been fighting. So maybe it's she targets certain criminals.
Yeah. The rules for this do seem a little weird because they say that the guard she killed was not a good guy. To be honest, I think it's kind of maybe reading a little bit too much into this one. Dean was in trouble because he'd been sent to the infirmary. I don't necessarily think it's that deep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about this is that Dean is very keen to stay on, even if they don't solve this within the 5 hours that they have allotted left. He's like, I'll stay here, you can go, Sam. I'm going to sort this all out. I want to save these people. Whereas Sam's like, no, we really need to go. He's being a realist. It's interesting how quick Dean is to, like, again, sacrifice his freedom for saving people he doesn't even really know. In this same conversation, it was really interesting what Sam said to Dean.
Dean, does it bother you at all how easily you seem to fit in here?
No, not really.
Which is true. Like, he's talking to people in the yard, he's hustling people for cigarettes, like, he seems to be getting information and just, you know, sorting things out.
And he understands, like, the sort of prison lingo, as it were, as well. Because he's upset that he has to give up his cigarettes.
Yeah, which is really surprising. Like, Dean, what are you going to do with those? You don't smoke, or do you?
So, yeah, and, you know, they kind of continue this argument of, like, needing to get out of there. And Sam makes the case of, like, well, we don't owe Deacon anything. Like, we have such a loose connection to him. Like, it doesn't, we shouldn't risk our lives for someone we don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
It sort of cuts to another scene, and Dean's now in, like, the visitation. And he's talking with his lawyer, like, over the phone thing, like, with the glass. He doesn't want to talk about their case. He wants her to find out about Nurse Glockner. Like, so this is where I feel like John was too short-sighted with, because there are sort of lifers for hunting, and John became a lifer. Like, that was all he was ever going to do.
Yeah.
Dean is a lifer. Like, that was all he was ever going to do, especially growing up. And that was because of John, like, telling him that this is the only way you can live because you have to save people.
Yeah.
But if there were hunter lawyers, and who had other professions outside of hunting, having this request, like, they would have someone that they could call and be like, hey, I'm in trouble, and they would know how to help them, rather than, like, just have anybody and, like, have this conversation and seem crazy.
Well, yeah, this is it. Like, the network doesn't really function. Like, there is kind of a network going on, but they don't seem to help each other out in this way where you think it would actually be useful. And that's maybe what Sam could have done, but that's a whole nother rant. Yeah, I think it could have been super helpful. Because I appreciate this lawyer. She kind of is... She's very taken in by Dean, though, I would say.
Yes. Well, so... I mean, she already has doubts, so, you know, having this conversation where, like, showing no concern for yourself, and then asking about something so bizarre as to, like, where is somebody buried? Well, she already knows that there's charges against him for desecration of a grave.
Yeah.
So that there must be a reason for it. I think it's strange that, like, he doesn't even try to explain, because he's done it before where he's explained what you have to do to get rid of a ghost.
Yeah, I can see why he doesn't in this case, because he's already in prison, and, like, this woman kind of seems to be on his side a little bit, so he doesn't necessarily want to alienate her by suddenly talking about ghosts. Yeah, I mean, she seems pretty, like, ready to help him out. I thought the line she says here...
Henriksen says you're a monster.
I'm a monster. Well, he's wrong, okay? I'm not what they say I am.
Everybody says that.
Yeah.
And Dean looks really affronted, like, I'm a monster? But he says, like, I'm not what they say I am. And then he says, like, look at me. Am I guilty? We're not the bad guys. And he does seem really sincere, and she does seem to believe him, which...
Then again, if you have someone like Dean looking at you and says, look at me, do I look guilty?
He's never done anything wrong in his whole life, so no. So it seems like he's managed to convince her, or at least hints that he has. And so we go back and we see Dean and Sam together again. They're out in the prison yard. Again, they're having this conversation. Dean wants to stay. Sam wants to stick to the plan. And they kind of, like, get a little pushy with it. And start, like, pushing each other like children.
So this is where I realized they could finish this case outside of the prison.
Yeah.
Like how we were saying earlier, that, like, they didn't actually have to be here for any of it. they have Deacon,
Mm-hmm.
who's someone in the prison. We don't know who he is, but he's clearly has pull because they contacted him to get them out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and he was the one who contacted them saying that, like, he wants the thing gone.
Mm-hmm.
So could they not have said, like, hey, go into the thing and salt and burn the thing? You already know.
Well, this is it, because they get taken somewhere quiet and they find out that the guard who's been hassling Dean and kind of being weirdly strange with his face is actually Deacon. So there's no reason why he couldn't have done all the investigation that they've just done here. I really actually don't understand why they were in the prison in the first place. Surely they could have just been consultants on this.
Exactly. This was definitely, I mean, maybe Deacon didn't want to, like, get in trouble for, like, damaging property or something.
Well, Sam managed to start a fire in a prison and no one noticed. So, I mean, there was no mention of him starting that fire or getting in trouble for it or anyone even knowing that he started the fire.
Wouldn't they have, like, an incinerator on site, too, for something? Like,
I mean, maybe. Not everywhere has, like, something like that. But, like, also, he definitely should have got in trouble for starting that fire.
yes, absolutely.
Like, there must have been smoke alarms or something. And also, how did he ever find his way back? Did he go back through the vent and then back through the kitchen? Because that fight didn't take that long. So how did he get back to where he was? Plot holes everywhere.
You know, he might be able to, like, get out into the prison yard somehow and, like, kind of unnoticed.
I mean, maybe, but there's a lot of doors that are locked in between him and there, I feel.
True.
It doesn't seem very open from Anyway, maybe he took a different vent and, like, dropped from the ceiling like a neighborhood Spider-Man. So Deacon reveals himself and says to Dean, like, I thought I was going easy on you, obviously referring to the earlier punches that he landed on him. Again, Sam's kind of arguing, like, you know, Dean saying this isn't over. They have this conversation several times.
Which is why we should stick around until we find it.
Oh, hey, guys. You want to have this fight for real, Dean? We gotta go. We gotta go now. Guys, we're leaving, Dean. Otherwise, we'll be leaving in shackles for Milwaukee with Hendricks and his company.
Come on.
Guys.
What?
And Deacon shows them a letter that the lawyer left with them, which has the information that they needed of where this nurse is buried. It turns out that Glocker died in the prison because she was killed by inmates, but they do have the location of her grave. And so Deacon leads them to, like, another air vent, thanks them, says to them,
Your daddy raised you right.
No, he didn't. Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. What John did was raise them to be loyal. That's not necessarily to be right. Because they just got themselves in a lot of trouble for no reason, as we've just established.
Mm-hmm. It was really no reason. And it made me wonder, actually, what do they owe Deacon? Like, do you think, and as well, do you think this is their debt to Deacon? Or is this John's debt to Deacon that they're paying back? I reckon Deacon did a favour for John that he's calling in. I don't think he helped them out. Because Sam doesn't know him. So maybe this guy wasn't a hunter then. I always thought on this episode that he was a hunter, but they said that he was in the Corps with John. So maybe he wasn't. I guess he knew to contact John if there was a ghost. It's a weird relationship.
So I do wonder, maybe he was around a little bit after Mary had died. Because, you know, like, when, you know, they were buddies probably for life, right?
Yeah. Because we said this before, that the best people to get on board with his hunting would have been his, like, Marine buddies. So maybe he actually did do that a little bit. Yeah,
like, maybe because he obviously has prison contacts, and maybe there was, like, some stuff that he, like, Deacon could get. I don't know. This is, you know, another one of those, like, passing characters that we learn nothing else about.
I know. We never see Deacon again, right? So, yeah.
No,
as they leave, Dean says to him, where do you want it? And squarely punches him in the face because obviously it needs to look like they overpowered him to escape. And then they find Baby. The first time we see her in this episode.
Why? This car is not... Give them a Toyota. Something they can blend in with, and like then they can go find baby after the fact.
It's like parked outside the prison as well. I guess Deacon brought the car there. That makes total sense. But still, like, Dean saying, like, I wish I could see Hendrickson's face right now as well. It's clearly establishing in this episode because he was introduced in Night Shifter as an antagonist. But this episode really cements Hendrickson as Dean's antagonist for this season.
Yes, definitely. I guess Sam has yellow eyes, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dean has a human.
I mean, yeah, and like Sam is kind of wary of Hendrickson, but more for Dean's sake than his own. So it's definitely Dean's nemesis and not Sam's.
I do like the fact that, like, Sam says, we're not out of the woods yet. And then siren starts to go off. And so then we're back with Hendrickson, and he's interviewing Deacon. And he's being kind of aggressive about it again, because it's another connection. And he's sort of, wanting to find out exactly what they did that day, start to finish, like, everything. And, like, who he spoke to. Deacon tells him they woke up, had breakfast, blah, 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 blah. And then he says that Dean spoke to the lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So then we're back with Hendrickson interviewing the lawyer, and she's trying to, play it or tell them that it's a private conversation, I can't tell you about it. And then it cuts to Sam and Dean, and they're approaching, like, a graveyard.
We gotta move it. If Hendrickson gets to the lawyer.
I thought she couldn't say anything, that whole lawyer-client privilege thing.
The privilege doesn't apply, Dean.
So she'll talk?
She has to.
Oh, that's freaking super.
It kind of cuts between them, and we see the lawyer telling Hendrickson something. So obviously she gets pressured into it, essentially, because it does take a lot of doing on his part. A lot of threatening her, actually, with, like, legal action, saying, like, well, you helped them out, you helped them escape, kind of thing. We can, we'll try and pin that on you for her to hand over that information. And they do this next bit, like, I really appreciated it, because you kind of see the police getting ready to go get Sam and Dean, and you see them digging up a grave, and it's all very tense again. Again, tension is the theme of this episode. As they're kind of pulling up to a graveyard, we see them, hit pay dirt and find this body, and they do the salt and burn. Really nice shots in this. There's a really nice shot of Sam, like, looking up from the grave and saying that he found it. I thought that was really nice. There's good shots of them, like, lighting the matches or the lighter or whatever. They always light that really, really well. Again, orange being the only colour in this episode in jumpsuits or in fire, but still.
Yeah.
While they're salting and burning, because you can't have a salt and burn without some kind of, like, person in trouble, right? That's just not supernatural.
Exactly.
So we see the ghost is going after Deacon. His bad thing was that he let them escape. That kind of makes sense also. But, of course, it's a just-in-time salt and burn. They managed to burn the ghost before it kills Deacon. And they're kind of just watching it burn, again, well casually. They know the police are after them, and they're still just stood there like, yeah, we started a fire.
So I do wonder about this, because how long do they have to wait for this to, like, do they have to wait for the bones to burn completely? Or is it only to a certain point? Because as the reason why they keep getting caught, but yet they're so good at covering their tracks, is because they're desecrating graves, setting them on fire, and just walking away and, like, leaving it open. Because I know they're using accelerant, but, like, bodies don't burn that quick, right?
So, yes. And it's proved in this episode, because, okay, I'll finish up the episode and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
So, because we see Sam and Dean watching the body burn, and then obviously the cops turn up and they're in the wrong place. The lawyer lied, and it shows the two different cemeteries that they're at. I think the cops are at Mountainside and Sam and Dean are at Greenside or something.
Green Valley.
Green Valley, yes. There's a nice shot of the lawyer as she leaves the police station, like, smiling. And as we've seen kind of Sam and Dean walk away from that grave, you can see in the background that it's still on fire. Like, there's an orange glow, which kind of answers your question. I think you're right, though. I think they would have to... I guess if you've ever started a fire... This is a weird conversation. You want to make sure that it's going before you kind of leave it alone. You need to kind of make sure that you've added enough accelerant or, like, you've actually started like establishing it before you can then go and do other things. Like if you have a little fireplace, it takes a little moment where you have to sit in front of it and like just watch it. Like, are you gonna start? Are you gonna go? Maybe it's that. So the music at the end of this is Rooster by Alison, which is a really great song. And they kind of have a similar, there's a kind of similar vibe to this as there is at the end of Night Shifter. That Sam says,
Thought we were screwed before? Yeah, I know. We gotta go deep this time.
Deep, Dean? We should go to Yemen.
Oh, I'm not sure I'm ready to go that deep.
this doesn't feel like the end of this B-plot, to be honest.
No, not at all.
No.
I guess this is where my conflict is then, because, you know, Hendrickson's always like, oh, you're really good at covering your tracks, but then, like, they just left a grave open.
Yeah.
And burning. Another thing that I thought was kind of dumb on the FBI's part is they didn't verify that what the lawyer told them was true. Like, surely that's what... I know they were strapped for time.
Yeah, I think that's it.
But, like, wouldn't you have somebody, like, stay behind and be like, you know, your little lackey sidekick? Wouldn't you tell him to, like, make sure that this is correct?
I guess so. I mean, if the lawyer was smart, she would have told them a graveyard that was, like, way too far for them to go to the other one if they verified it in time. You know, like, other side of the city kind of thing. Yeah, I think it's really interesting that she chose to help them out. She obviously believed Dean. I mean, she could potentially still get herself in a lot of trouble for that if she was found out that she was lying, but I guess she could always just say, well, I was mistaken.
I didn't remember what I had written or something.
Yeah. Because they're obviously going to find that open grave that's burning. Yeah, you're right. They're going to find it eventually. Yeah.
But surely they're going to go, because there's another, like, he's trying to obviously pin as much stuff on them as that will, like, stick. So they already know that they were looking for a nurse Glockner.
Yeah.
So, like, when they find her and find that her grave is now burned, okay, that's another count of grave robbery or whatever. Desecration of a grave.
I mean, at this point with the murder charges, like, it feels like a drop in the ocean. But, like, yeah, you're right. It is clearly showing that that's what... The thing is, it paints a picture for Hendrickson as well, though, of what they're like, because they escaped from prison, and then the first thing they did when they escaped from prison was go and desecrate a grave. Like, it just makes them seem more out there to him. And I think after this, he does kind of ramp up looking for them. I really like this storyline. I wish they had kept it a bit later on, and it had gone for longer, I feel. Because they do kind of just drop this in the end. Like, they don't really have any trouble from law enforcement anymore. They tend to work with them more than they work against them sometimes. Whereas their early interactions with law enforcement always feel very... I don't know. It's difficult. Like, there's... Yeah.
They're almost in contempt of them. Like, I mean, we've seen it with Dean. Like, you know, when he said that Sam kind of tries to justify the police being there, and Sam's like, well, we could do it better.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think they do have a lot of contempt for the police in the first few seasons, and I think that does kind of disappear almost. I don't know if maybe Jodie has something to do with that, Jodie and Donna, possibly. But
I guess it also, you know, where the story goes, I feel like the police comes into perspective, like that they're very small in the whole landscape of things, so they just almost brush them off. Whereas right now, like, their world is very small. You know, is all these very, like, there isn't this whole, like, overarching story as of yet.
Yeah. It's very like very anime, right? Where you're like fighting the next big bad, and it's always bigger than the last one, and like the other one's inconsequential now, even though it was a major player in the last season. It's very that. Yeah.
Very much so.
Overall, I think this episode is okay. Like, it has some interesting themes in it, but it does feel very much like a Monster of the Week episode. I don't think we ever see Deacon again, which is a shame, because that could have been an interesting relationship to explore with, like, a friend of their dad that is kind of like him. Because he was quite ready to sacrifice Sam and Dean to get this ghost. Like, he asked them to do something that was really stupid. So I think that could have been interesting, and I don't think we get to see that anymore.
So Dean obviously doesn't divulge like any personal information. So I think as soon as Deacon contacted them, was like, "Hey, I need your help with this ghost thing, but you need to be here to do it." I don't think he told them how much trouble he was in with like the FBI.
No, I don't think Dean probably told Deacon about the FBI stuff, to be honest. I think you're right.
So, it was probably like after the fact when they found out like all of the charges that were against them that he was like, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that probably."
I agree, actually. You're right. I'm putting a lot of blame on Deacon here, but you're probably right. I don't think they told them how much trouble they could get in if they did get caught in prison. Because if they had actually just been arrested for something like petty theft, I mean, it's obviously a big deal, but in the scheme of things for them, it maybe wouldn't have been such a big deal as getting arrested for murder by Hendrickson. So yeah, maybe Deacon didn't fully understand what he was asking them to do, but that's pretty much on them. They should have told him that. But other than that, I think it's okay. Like, it stands up all right in the series. It's a nice B-plot episode. I don't think it's as good as like The Usual Suspects or Night Shifter, but it's still it's okay.
Yeah, it sort of is missing that comedy. Like I said, this was played very straight.
Yeah.
I feel like I could probably skip it if I ever do a rewatch again.
It's one of the first ones I kind of said that about so far. It's all right. So what have we got next week, Annabelle?
So next week, the episode is What Is and What Should Never Be. Ooh. And the reason why I went, is because it's directed by Kripke.
Yes, I knew this about this episode. Oh, I have things to say about this one, Annabelle. This one's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to it.
So, I mean, that brings us to the end of this episode this week. Thank you to the Pixel Agora for our logo. Definitely go follow them on Tumblr and go help them out on Ko-fi, or, commission some artwork from them. You can find us on pretty much all platforms: Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Just search for Escaping Purgatory Podcast. We also do have merch on Redbubble. I actually recently ordered a whole bunch of stuff. I haven't got it yet, so once I do, I'll let you guys know how good a quality is. I mean, it's going to be Redbubble quality, obviously. So if you've ordered from them before, you kind of know what you're getting. Go check it out. Get yourself a logo and be a Purgatory pal.
Yay, be a Purgatory pal. Okay, folks. This week, as we walked through Purgatory, we had some kind of self-imposed lockdown, and then we realised that was kind of dumb. And we managed to escape through a very conveniently placed air vent. So hopefully next week we can find our way out. Bye.
Bye.